For July 18, 2017, I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to again call the roll.
Trustee Kammer?
Here.
Carbonaro?
Here.
Deyne?
Yes, here.
Gabrenya?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
Ranky?
Here.
President Wallace.
Here. First item on our agenda this evening is under Planning and Zoning. Chairman Hopkins.
Thank you, President Wallace. We have one item on our agenda, the Bartlett High School Stadium improvement. The petitioner is requesting a site plan amendment to allow the placement of a permanent home grandstand, and they also are requesting a special use permit to allow a public stadium for fixed seating in a 70-foot tall structure. With that, Mr. Plonzitsky, could you run us through this?
Thank you, Trustee Hopkins. I've put up the original high school stadium seating layout for the whole high school area. And you can see that the stadium location is kind of in the, what I would call the southeasterly portion of the site. That's where they intend on building the activity complex. The site plan amendment would take that layout and turn it into this one, but better layout. This is the phasing plan. You heard Valerie talk about it, but they would amend the original plan for this high school site, and they are needing a special use permit for the public seating. Fixed seat stadium in the P1 district is a special use, as are the 70-foot tall light structures that they intend on placing around the property so that the space can be lighted. And they will also be asking for variation from the side yard, the side over here, which is forest preserve. The original plan had a setback of 25 feet on the PUD plan. They're asking for 10 feet to allow them to construct phase 2B, which will be visitors seating. Just going through real quickly. It's a nice layout. They've taken it, and it's going to be done in phases with this seating area and the detention area primarily being the first phase, and then moving on to the concession and the visitor stadium. I'm going to get to some of the renderings. That's probably a little better look. Activity complex. This is the build-out rendering, and then here's a look from the bird's eye view of what it'll look like. You can see the light poles, and then just some detail. This is the stadium complex with the press box. The U46 is here. Superintendent Jeff King, architect Greg Berna, and architect and Bill from DLA, the architects who designed this, as well as the people you've heard for the boosters. So with that, we'll entertain any questions. I hope that we hope to get it moving through the public hearing process, both zoning board and planning commission in August.
Can you go back one or more pictures? Go forward one.
One more. Oh.
Okay. Where's Petersdorf and where's Army Trail?
I went through, let me go back, way back to the original. I've got the layout. Here is the stadium site, Petersdorf being on the west side. Basically, the layout of the high school is not changing. The drives are going to stay the same, and Schick being on the north side. This is the forest preserve. That's where that setback is. So it's going to be fit into the existing site location.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plonzitsky. I'm personally excited about this. I want to thank all the residents and obviously business owners for stepping up and making this happen. I think that's wonderful. With that, does anyone have any questions?
I'd like to see it go to the ZBA and Plan Commission.
I would just make a comment that George kind of underplayed his 11 years of trying to get this to happen, and I can tell you emphatically, after having kids go through and traveling up to Streamwood for a football game, that Streamwood High School is just as excited as Bartlett High School is. And I think it's important we acknowledge Mr. King's done a lot of work on this, and we've tried to get him to jump through some hoops, so he's here, and I appreciate his efforts on this from U46. And also Principal Domovsky has done a lot of work on this. Jeff Brawl's done a lot of work on this. And this is really, truly, as George said, been a community effort. It's just an opportunity for these high school students to have a field of their own and actually stay there during their games and have their parents there during their games. And it'll be an actual sidebar opportunity for all those businesses along 59 after the games. They'll be going out there instead of going to where we have went, which is Subway up in Streamwood after a game. So there's a lot of benefits to this, and the quicker we can get this to fly through, the better chances of having some games this year, right, George? That's our objective, is to move it. I think they picked a perfect location because it's way away from any type of residential. There's a lot of dirt work that needs to be done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to get this site prepped, and there's been some tremendous outpouring of businesses offering pro bono services. If U46 will allow that, then we have a lot of major contractors that are offering pro bono services to get this thing done and in. So,
Brings a new meaning to the word homecoming.
yes, yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm just curious, I think it's great, I couldn't be happier, but where's the parking?
There's parking all around the.
All around?
Parking is
Suspension
going to
is the
be
best.
essentially the same area that it is now. It's up in the north part of the site.
So in the existing parking lots, so it's not like there's new parking lots built with the stadium?
No new parking lots.
Where the existing ones are at? Well,
Right.
That's what I'm trying to, that's what I wanted to know.
It's the same place they have to park for baseball games
Right.
and soccer games and, yeah.
Students aren't there, so.
Yeah,
Was there any concern from the Forest Preserve District about lowering that 25-foot buffer to a 10-foot buffer? And are there any safety issues on that east side of the stadium, with it only being 10 feet?
We received the letter from them that they're reviewing the plans, but to my knowledge, they have not said that they have a problem with it. I think they're mostly concerned that it wasn't going to impact their wetlands, and and this site obviously is going to drive additional stormwater detention, and so far they're fine with it. We're having the public hearings, they may comment on that, but at this time, they've just sent a letter reviewing it.
And are there any safety issues so that safety personnel can get to that side of the field if it's only 10 feet on that side?
We sent this, our fire marshal, Mike Heimberger, reviewed this. We also, in conjunction with this, we were looking at a revised traffic flow for the site, and everybody seemed to think that this will be easy access, better access. You'll come in from the same drive, and then there will be more pavement in this area to actually get back into there. They didn't have a big problem with it.
And I think from what I've heard, the water retention will actually be improved better than it is now, which should have been done many years ago. Do you have a question, Jay?
I'm Jay Langfelder from 1665 Penny Lane, but I am also a trustee of the Bartlett Fire Protection District. You mentioned the fact that on safety personnel, when was that plan submitted to the Fire Marshal Heimberger?
Oh, a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure the exact date.
Okay, because we have our meeting tomorrow, and would it be possible for the fire district to have a copy of it, if possible? A copy of this
We've
plan?
given you a copy of it. I know that Mike has it.
Okay, all right, because that was not in our agenda, but I will ask the chief about that. And then also about the press box, I was involved with the South Elgin Stadium almost in 2010 when they started their building. Does this include an elevator to the press box because of handicap, facility has to be accessible nowadays for the press corps, and that was one issue that was involved, was an elevator.
I'm going to let them answer that, but I don't think there's an elevator.
Yep.
Okay, and so it is under 500 square feet, the press box? Okay. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Langfelder.
I think this is one of the items that, after it goes through the zoning board and planning commission and the public hearing, we could probably have it right back at the board level.
Yeah,
to
I
kinda
would love to have it.
expedite things.
Yeah.
I know someone said it, and I didn't, I can't remember it. What are we talking about if you received approval? How long would it take to have this built and whatnot? What are we looking at? About?
I believe that the stadium seating takes 10 weeks to fabricate.
That's all?
You obviously got to do the groundwork and put the concrete in there, but just that takes 10 weeks. So you're looking at 4 or 5 months construction easy.
So as soon as in reality they'd be able to do anything would be next year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There's not going to be any games for this with this stadium this
I
year.
guess you're going to Streamwood High School?
Not with this year, but.
Will site work start
George,
this
go
year?
ahead.
We're hoping to have site work started and at least the concrete work of the home bleachers started this fall and possibly even the bleachers, might be December.
Yeah, exactly. We were hoping to get dirt work started this year. Bleachers, as he did say, are about a 10-week manufacturing, depending on what time of the year you get it. If it's before a season, it's going to be 10 weeks. If it's after a season, it might be less. And to answer your question, we do plan on having a football game there. We had a soccer game there this past year. We're going to have another football game there this year and a soccer game there this year, this coming year. You're invited.
Good.
One question.
Yes.
Is this a stadium where we're going to actually have artificial turf there?
That's phase 4.
Okay, so it's coming.
Depends on how many more businesses we can wrap on the door of, right? Yeah.
You can write a check, Vince.
I already did.
Like grass seed.
All right. Anything else?
We'll forward this on to the zoning
Thank
board.
you, U46, for being here. Thank you, George. Thank you,
you,
Mr.
gentlemen.
Hellmans. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll forward this on, and that's all we have under planning and zoning.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Next item we have under the committee of the whole meeting this evening as under the building committee, Chairman Gabrenya.
We have one item, an amendment to Chapter 10, Land and Cash Donations by Developers. The staff, under the request of certain land developers, the village underwent a new land market value assessment, decreasing the land value from $160,000 to $125,000 per acre. Jim, would you explain more?
Thank you, Trustee Gabrenya. The village periodically has done updates to its land cash ordinance. The land cash ordinance, just some background, started with an old legal case that allowed for developers to contribute to school and park donation when development occurred, and they used to, because the taxes collected by those districts always were in arrears of when the development was finished, and there was pressure on schools and parks to provide for all the new students and new park participants. Over the years, it's kind of evolved into extruding extra donations. We have library donations in ours. We have fire district donations. We have village and police donations, and the park district obviously is in there. Most of the donations are a combination of land values and per capita school-age populations put into a formula, and lo and behold, you come out with a dollar amount. when your land values, development's going great, land values are high, and obviously developers are getting more money for their homes, they're willing to pay more dollars for those donations. Over the years, we've adjusted it to kind of keep pace with development. Nobody accounted for the 2008 drop in development overall, the whole country. Our donation ordinance at that time, as we came out of that recession, and we had our first development, which was the Enclave down on near the school, down on Gerber Roads, thank you, Brian. They challenged our donation value at that time because they bought the land at a discounted price. They went through the challenge that's in our ordinance, and they bought it for basically $70,000 an acre. We went through the review of that. They paid the freight based on the $70,000 an acre. We subsequently dropped the donation table in 2013, which I have on the next slide, to the $160,000 an acre value. However, we kept in a little modifier that was basically for servicing properties with public infrastructure, and that was equated to $50,000 an acre. So our donation ordinance was the $160 market value plus the $50,000 infrastructure cost. And over the years, there's very few sites left that don't have infrastructure to them. So this time around, we felt that dropping that $50,000 infrastructure cost is not necessary anymore, because most of our sites have sewer and water right up to their borders, what's left for development. And Brian can attest to this probably more than I, there isn't a day or a week that goes by where developers who want to develop in this town ask us, when are you going to lower your development costs? And we've had some that have done it. You know, we've had obviously Bartlett Point West and the William Ryan development doing it under our current ordinance. And others, there's a development pressure is picking up again. We have some vacant properties that people are interested in developing. That coupled with the development community asking for that and other towns lowering theirs over the years. We hired our land appraiser who have been consistent, Mike McCann and Associates out of Chicago. He did a market study and a land analysis and determined that our fair market value for land is $125,000. Basically, we adjusted the table, looked at our per capitas for police, village and police. We ran this by the other districts. They felt comfortable with the changes. So you're seeing a change and I use the 4-bedroom home, for example, from the 2013 ordinance of this is around $6,000. I've talked to some other developers who are interested in towns, in developing in the town. They think that's a fair assessment of the value of land in Bartlett and a fair price. Obviously, they wish it was lower, but it's proved by our market analysis and our fair market value appraisal by McCann that we can sustain that $125,000 per acre. So that being said, this table represents the new costs that, and we make it easier. You plug in your home, what you're building, or your townhome, or your apartment. You run across the table. You can see what each district is going to get when a unit of this type is built. So just for instance, if you go across, the most popular home is probably a 3-bedroom home. The bottom line is $14,693.81. School donations, cash and land, roughly almost $6,000. Library, a little under $500. Park is $4,000. Fire, $653. Police, $1,085. In the village, $2,323. The park is based on 10 acres per 1,000 residents, so you have to calculate out how many residents that development would generate and divide it. So that's where we're at. I'll try to answer any questions.
I would add that it's been updated to deal with more recent case law where there have been challenge to donation ordinances. In Illinois, the donations are required to be specifically, or the extractions specifically and uniquely attributable to the development in question. Going back to the Krugoff versus Naperville case where you can use some of the research that other town had, that's what our ordinance was premised. We first had one in 1987. It was amended several times. Brian Goralski will tell you that we've gotten complaints for several years, but more recently, that it is our high donations in comparison to other towns that has kept some residential developers from developing in town. They find our donations, in their estimation, excessive. We re-looked at this, and Jim talked about that $50,000 multiplier. More than anything is that we have comps, and they all had all the comps that the appraiser Mike McCann used. They had utilities available. So when we did it years ago, it was sort of a hypothetical 1 acre in the middle of town, and there were some that had utilities and some that did not, and it had that inflation factor, so to speak. And it frankly went back to an estimate that Pavia Marting did that was 20-plus years old and left us a little susceptible. You'll see that some towns don't have donation ordinances in part because they don't want to be challenged. We're not just collecting this, for the village, but for all the taxing districts. In the past, that U46 to indemnify us. It's to the benefit of all taxing districts that collect on this. There are some arguments that you can't charge for sort of the ongoing costs is the lag between when the monies come in and a property goes online, but we are home rule and I believe can, on that basis, distinguish us from some cases. There are U.S. Supreme Court cases where there's challenges to what they call extractions, but it's making a developer pay for the impact that their development will cause to the community. You just have to make sure that what you're charging them is fair based on the impact that they're causing. And so I believe that with changes to comply with some of the case law and a number that we can support more clearly based on a current appraisal makes our ordinance more defensible than it was. Easiest thing would be to say none, but I don't think that's fair to the taxing districts or ourselves. We're a taxing district as well, but there is a true impact that these developers cause on the community, and that's what this is trying to achieve, is to pay for that impact.
And I would just want to underscore the two things, people have questioned, why are you basically taking money away from these other districts and yourself? And the two things are being competitive for development. Our neighbors have lowered their donation ordinances, Elgin, the most recent, and the point that Brian was making is, keeping a minimal risk to our ordinance and shoring it up. And those are really the two driving forces behind looking at this ordinance now, being competitive for development and protecting our risk.
This brings up what we discussed briefly at our last meeting about perception. And I appreciate the fact that we're lowering our donation table because I think that helps to change that perception about how things get done in Bartlett. But I am curious about how we play comparably to other villages, other cities. And I kind of would like to see information on that, if it's possible to know, how is this done in Hanover, Streamwood, Schaumburg? How are we fitting into this whole plan on these donations? And are we still above what other cities are charging these developers? And if so, why? And it's an impedance to changing this perception, and I certainly would like to know more about that as far as, where we stand with the donations going in, so that if we're lowering this, but we're still higher than Schaumburg or higher than other villages, then why would we be? Why should we be? And that certainly doesn't help the perception of builders coming in and saying, hey, we want to build in Bartlett, when they got to pay more donations. So then we need to look at changing that even further if that's the case. So I would like to see some information on that if we could.
We can get you some of that. I can tell you that many towns don't have any donation requirement by ordinance at all, and they try and negotiate on an ad hoc basis. For years, Jack Siegel was the attorney in Schaumburg, and his position, he didn't believe in having a donation ordinance, didn't want to be challenged or whatever. So you may see that Schaumburg on paper is zero, but I represent the Schaumburg Park District, and I can tell you that we negotiate, we want land here for a park, and so you won't be comparing apples to apples and see a dollar figure per se. Other towns probably have them and will let us get you that information.
Aren't they on the appraisal here?
The appraisal is the comparable values are from other towns, but they don't show what their town donations are. Those are just comparable values for land sales.
Right.
Through the Northwest Municipal Conference, we try to obtain as much information as we can, and I can provide it for you for the next meeting, or, before the for the next agenda, whenever it's brought back.
The other thing to keep in mind is that the taxing districts have come to rely on this some, and we're asking them to take much less because we feel that's supported by a lower appraised value. But, to knock it out completely, as some towns do, that would have a detrimental effect on the taxing districts. Again, understood that we don't want to take on risk or liability that we don't have to, and if that's an impediment and we're not competitive in the development market, that's certainly a consideration and something you'd want to look at.
Well, and we've come to rely on this. We use the developer donations to replace the trees. So it's been a betterment to the entire community.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I know the answer to this, I think, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The developers that have completed projects at this time would have no recourse if we change this ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I knew that, but I just wanted to ask you.
Not under this ordinance.
Is it safe to say that we would want this to go, with the additional information, go to the board meeting next instead of going committee and then board again? I think that would be a good idea, and if we have discussion then and everybody seems to agree, then we'll skip.
Back to committee.
Yeah, we'll just get the questions answered that the board has asked, some comparables, and then we'll bring it right back to the board, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You can do that. Thank you.
And that will do it for the building committee this evening and our committee of the whole. Next item on the committee of the whole agenda is Finance and Golf Committee Chairman Deyne.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item is the home rule sales tax. And these are options, adding a home rule sales tax or a food and beverage tax, which we discussed at our second committee meeting. Due to the administrative advantages and a broader range of sales tax, the implementation of a home rule sales tax was recommended over a food and beverage tax. A home rule sales tax of 0.25% would generate approximately $400,000 per year. Again, this is only for discussion. Todd, you want to jump in here? Do you have any?
Thank you, I do. Thank you, I do. Yeah, as discussed, this came up during the budget review process. We passed our budget this year with a general fund using a little over $400,000 in surplus. We left a number of positions open just so that we could make it through the year without using more than $400,000 in the general fund balance. We looked at the two options. Home rule sales tax looks like a good option for us. We've listed the neighbors below as far as what their home rule sales tax is, and we are clearly lower than the rest of them with zero home rule sales tax at this time. This is on general merchandise purchase, so it does not include food and prescription medicine and things like that. It's just on general merchandise. In regard to the $400,000, 0.25% would raise about $400,000. That would basically make up for what we're using out of the fund balance this coming budget. Since our last discussion, the state did pass its budget. They've changed their income tax sharing formula. They've reduced ours 10% starting in July. Their fiscal year starts in July. Our budget for income tax sharing for this year was $4,160,000. So 10% of that would be roughly $400,000 that we're going to be short in the next state's fiscal year. They do say that they're going to. You've heard they're going to increase or direct deposit 2 months' worth, and that way that we will be made whole on a cash flow basis. We are not on a cash basis accounting, though. We do account according to when we should receive the funds, so that won't affect us as far as our accounting. We book a receivable for when we're supposed to get the money, not when we actually do get the money. So according to the Illinois Municipal League, they said that we would just about be okay, but then the Illinois Government Finance Officers Association came out and said, no, that's not how most towns do their accounting. So we can get into the accounting more, right, Vince? But
Are you saying, Mr. Treasurer, that you don't trust the state?
So every day Paula would say, what's that going to cost us? But no. So we are going to be short around another $400,000 in income tax sharing from the 10% reduction. So based on the figures, we're recommending a 0.5% home rule sales tax. That would be roughly $800,000 a year. That would just make us whole from what we were short using out of the general fund this year. What the state is just cut. That would still leave us below our neighboring towns as far as the sales tax.
So then our tax levy would pretty much remain constant if we implemented this? It'd be a sales tax?
The property tax?
Yeah, our levy.
Yeah, the property taxes, we budgeted for our 2017 property tax to be the same as what it was in 2016 as far as the general fund goes. Yeah. So that's what we were looking at. If we pass this, if this ordinance is passed before October 1, we get it into the state, the tax would be implemented January 1. We would basically start receiving money in April. So it takes there's a couple months delay in the sales tax as you see when I give the treasurer's report each month.
Now, what kind of burden will this put on our retail commercial outlets here in the village?
Right now, they would collect it right along with their regular sales taxes.
What about reporting, though?
I mean, it would be right with the state would collect it. And actually, the state, with their budget, is implementing a administration fee on these kind of taxes. I don't know if the 2% administration fee on home rule and other taxes that the state collects for municipalities. They're going to start doing that. So out of $400,000, that would be $8,000 that they would keep as far as an administration fee, and that's something that new, that they're going to throw on there. No, the businesses would not. It would just be, they would, instead of collecting a 7% DuPage County and a 9% Cook, they would collect the 7.5%, submit it to the state, and then the state would distribute it.
Now, I know you had mentioned before, but I didn't quite hear you. What businesses would this affect?
This is on general merchandise, so it does not include food and prescription medicines, medical.
Or liquor?
It would include liquor, it would include restaurant sales, prepared meals, all of that. Just not, I think it's currently 1.5% at the grocery store.
Yeah, so Jewel would be.
Yeah.
Right. But if we stopped at one of the local restaurants here in town, we would pay the food and, we would
Yes.
pay tax on
Prepared food
all
is
the sales
considered
tax.
general merchandise.
So if you bought a car at one of our car dealerships in town, you would have to pay that.
Which one do you want me to go to? There's a half dozen of them.
This is not, technically, this doesn't apply to titled cars. They have a different sales tax.
I'm sorry, that was a joke.
So, yeah.
You don't have to respond.
So basically, what we're looking at is the state has changed the multiplier, which is costing us money to operate.
They haven't changed any multipliers.
Is that not what you said?
They're changing the rate that they're gonna reduce their income tax sharing rate with us by 10%.
Okay.
Allegedly bump up the payments by 2.
These are the same people that gave us a 5% income tax decrease, which are turning around and putting that right back at us. That being said, I'm taking this very seriously because we just reduced the utility tax in town so that we can come back with another tax to make up for the shortage, but it's really not because of our lack of foresight. It's because the state has changed the playing field in so many different locations. Now they're making promises on how they can make those payments. I thought there was a federal injunction that said they can't distribute any money until they have a balanced budget, so how can they make those promises? Don't answer that question. The decision that we have to make tonight is for the better of the village of Bartlett. We are making those decisions because the state is in a disarray. So it's really not a penalty, it's we need to keep functioning with our budget, within our budget limits, and we can't do that because we're not getting funds from the state. Is that a fair assumption? Thank you.
Is there any more discussion regarding this?
I'm not a huge fan of this tax. I think if we did implement this, I think we should definitely eliminate the natural gas tax in this town.
Would it be, is it a trade-off? I mean, is that possible?
Our budget for the natural gas tax is $500,000.
So
That's what we'll receive this year. So, yeah, if we eliminated the natural gas tax,
be negating your increase.
Well, not at it.
that's $500,000.
0.5%.
I agree. I agree with you. I'm just trying to work through the numbers. With this 0.25%, we'd be at what, 7.25 in DuPage?
Yes.
And at 9?
It's currently 9% in Cook and 7% in DuPage.
We're still under the 11% of Naperville, Schaumburg, and City of Chicago, so we're still doing pretty good.
I think one of the things the board has to understand is that we have the fiscal responsibility to finance this village. And we have to trust the fact that the treasurer has looked up different ways for us to do that. We also have cut over $1 million in salaries over the last 4 years. There's no more room to leave people out of the budget, unless you want the services to start dropping. So we need to take a hard look at how we're going to do that with the changes that the state's done. So it's not a matter of dropping this one, picking up this one. It's a matter of adding something due to what the state's doing.
I think we're out of options.
If you want the village to run the way it is right now.
Well, I know when I opened my packet and I saw this home rule sales tax, and I also saw the next item that we'll talk about, video gaming fees. I wanted to sit back and listen to everyone's comments, and I tell you, I think it was very educational for myself this evening to hear the comments and respect what everyone said. So what are we doing with this, Mr. President?
This is, I would suggest that we move it to the board. I think we went through a lot of different options. I think we've went through several ways to plug holes and gaps, and this is, again, something that we can look at a year from now if the state's real changes that they make come to fruition. But for the time being, I know from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, we should not be pulling out of the general fund to finance the village, unless we then start risking a bond rating. So my suggestion is that we bring this to the board, people do some soul searching and realize that our staff has presented us with some options here to keep the village whole the way that they see best. That's my suggestion.
If I understood correctly, I came to the understanding that there was some urgency in this because you had talked about October to be implemented by January 1. So if that being the case, I think we do have to put it on the agenda and address it before that deadline, or before October 1st.
Yes, if you'd like, we're planning to bring it to the next meeting in August for a vote then.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that fair enough?
So staff is recommending 0.5%?
Yep.
So if we went to 0.75%, could we cut our natural gas tax?
That would be another 400,000 estimated, and our gas tax is about 500,000. Is 500,000 what we're estimating?
All right.
I personally would rather see that option. Go to 0.75% and eliminate the natural gas tax.
Well, when it comes to our discussion for vote, we'll discuss that.
Just
All right, we're going to move it along then.
one final thought
Oh,
here.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to go,
That's what to move it ahead, I need to know what percentage you want to.
okay, just so we're on the same page, so that we can answer some of Trustee Hopkins' questions and some things that I'd be asking if we are going to relook at this. There was an article that showed the surrounding municipalities as far as what they were charging for a food and beverage tax, for an alcohol tax, for this tax, for whatever. If we're going to keep looking at comparisons to what everybody else is doing, I know we're way under what everybody else is charging. If we're going to look at removing this one to increase that one, let's look at the norms around us for the different taxes.
As far as utility tax?
Yes,
or-
utility for the food and beverage. I mean, if we're going to try and get rid of one, if we're low on the sales tax, maybe we can bump that up to get rid of something else, but we need numbers.
What went kind of through my thought process, if you actually look at the numbers, most of the municipalities around us are at 0.75% or higher, excluding Bloomingdale at 0.5%. So my thought process is we're kind of keeping in at 0.75% what everyone else around us is doing.
Towns around us have a utility tax. I mean, that was kind of the thought process when we implemented the utility tax, that most of the towns are, so I don't know if that's the kind of comparison you want to make.
Well, they have a utility tax in addition to additional sales tax.
Right.
So if we take their two numbers and our two numbers, we're still way under.
But staff is recommending 0.5%, and if we go with what the surrounding communities are doing at 0.75%, we're basically, we don't need the utility tax.
No, we'll be 100,000 short.
I think we can make up 100,000. We're making progress by raising taxes on residents right here, so it's not something that I want to see, but to try to help residents out that are struggling paying this natural gas tax. You know, I think the natural gas tax is a burden on people, so I think we should eliminate it.
Anybody else have any other opinions on utility tax versus 0.5% as staff recommended?
Don't like the idea of a sales tax, but I think the point is very well taken that we need to have diverse revenue sources. If you spend $100, we're talking about 50 cents or 75 cents. So it's, any tax is an imposition, but this is a modest imposition. The utility tax has been thorny for us from the very beginning, since before Trustee Hopkins was here on the board. So I think, you know, his comments and his desire to get rid of that gas tax make an awful lot of sense, too. But I don't want to go crazy on the sales tax. And then I'd also wonder, too, and this is getting very detailed for this late hour, but I remember that there's an administrative fee on collection of the gas tax, and now there's an administrative fee on the collection of the sales tax, and I would wonder which, are they the same, or, and I would not expect you to know off the top of your head, but.
The gas tax is collected by the utility company?
Right, but don't they get an administrative fee?
They do, they get a slight, it's below 2%.
Okay.
Another thing involved with the utility tax is the senior rebates, which was
Right.
package tonight, which is something that needs to be, that was $60,000 this year, so.
So that would be taken out of the budget. if we
Yeah,
were to
yeah,
pay
I hope-
Utility tax, so now we're talking about $40,000. So,
But we'd have to pay the service fee from the state for the sales tax. So it's,
Trustee Hopkins, you're talking about taking away a rebate for the people that that most likely are utilizing it the most.
yeah, but if they're not paying in, they don't need a rebate. We're helping them even more.
It doesn't wash. The rebate is,
It's, how much, $30 is the rebate?
Yes, $30.
if you take that away, their tax isn't that much a month.
So you're saying they're not,
Penalizing them for,
so are you saying we're subsidizing them?
no, I'm saying that if you remove the utility tax and you take away the rebates, you're actually worse, they would be worse off, I believe, if you just left the utility tax alone.
It's close now. I would say it's close because originally when the tax, it was $1 million gas tax, 600,000 electric with a $30 rebate. We cut the gas tax in half and we've cut the electric tax by 3/4, but we haven't reduced the rebate.
I think that was part of our discussion at the last meeting, that there are residents that receive rebates that don't pay $30 in taxes.
Yeah, we do not track individuals'
Yeah.
utilities, but it's going to be close. Yeah, it's going to be close because we started out, total tax for an average person, $85 a year. That was at full rate. And that's been cut in half, easy, more than in half, so that would be down to the $40 range.
I understand the desire to shore up our budget, but on the other hand, I also look at the or the utility tax as an unfair tax, so that's just where I stand on it.
You know, Mr. President, I don't know if we're prepared to put this on on our agenda. I think that maybe we have to discuss this.
Yeah, we're not going to be meeting.
Oh, you're right.
First week in August.
Yeah.
So from a timing standpoint, Mr. Treasurer, would this have to go straight to board August 25th? Or would we have one more committee?
No, it just needs to be, it needs to be filed by the state, with the state by October 1st.
Okay, let's do this. The next committee meeting in August, let's get a rundown of those numbers. removing the utility tax and increasing, let's balance that out and throw those back at us. Is everybody good with that?
Yeah, that would include the rebates that.
Take a look at it all, and then we'll make a decision then to move it to board.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Moving along, the next item we have on our agenda is the video gaming fees. Again, this is for discussion only. Staff was asked to analyze the cost of video gaming terminal fees. Currently, the price of Bartlett is $25 per machine per year, and we have other information that the board has that of the other communities and what they're charging, and staff is recommending an increase in the fee. And Scott, can you add a little more to that if needed?
You said it perfectly. We started at $25 per terminal back in November 2012. We have not raised that rate since then, and we've been instructed to kind of analyze all our fees per Paula's request. And this is one of the first fees that you'll see before you. Below, you have two charts that shows our current revenue per machine as well as our comparable communities, and a second chart that shows what our revenue would be based on the increments and increases. Given the success of the machines, we're recommending an increase. If I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to.
Again, I have to admit that when I opened this up and read it, I was very excited to see that we had a discussion on this, because personally, I feel that $25 per terminal is really inexpensive. And looking at the other communities, I believe that we have to have an increase in the terminal fees, the stickers for them. So I'm curious.
Brian, can I ask you, what's the maximum we can charge?
Well, I don't know what the maximum would be.
No, Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had done research in the past.
Before it was zero.
I would not suggest anything above 500 and preferably, under that. But
When we started this whole event, if we all recall, there were a lot of questions around whether you could legitimize a per terminal fee at all.
there's litigation that I've researched, and
Yeah.
some of that's been decided, but it doesn't give you the clear answer to what is a reasonable cost. It's supposed to be based on what it costs you to administer it, et cetera. So again, at least the open question where we took the conservative approach to keep it at 25, because that's what non-home rule municipalities, that was the maximum they could charge. So we stuck with that. Others have increased it, and a few of them, when I was prepared to raise it, they got sued and said, hold on. And they spent a lot of money going up to the appellate court and arguing that, and eventually were successful in defending their fees. But again, if you're at the 500 or below, I think you're pretty safe.
And just to caveat this, what Mr. Skricky had mentioned, Paula has advised to review all fees. So this is the beginning of a lot of things the board's going to see as far as what our fee structures look like and where we can balance some things out a little bit. You know, I would suggest we're way too low right now, but I don't know if I'd want to suggest going to the $500 per terminal level. Maybe $200 to $300 a terminal sounds like a average number to me.
I'd like to go to 500. I think a lot of the communities around the area are, and why not? I mean, if we're going to have administration issues with it or collecting, then why don't we bring it up to what other villages are doing? And I think we make a little more money off of it as a village, and if it might be a detriment to more companies coming in and doing it. We're looking for ways to slow this down, and that might be a way to do it.
250 times 46 would give us another $10,000 a year.
What was that, Vince? I didn't hear you.
46 machines, if we raise it to 250, it would bring in another 10,000.
Or it'd bring in 23,000 at 500.
I agree with Dr. Kammerer that $500 is a reasonable charge for our administrative costs associated with the gambling machines.
I would agree with that also. I think we should do it incrementally, though.
What, like 250 next year and then 500 the following year,
I think that's a compromise.
just so there's no sticker shock.
Yeah.
I think it would make sense just to, for a new business that's a legitimate business that wants to have this, that maybe wants to open up build a new restaurant, for example. Maybe you tier it and you say, okay, the first year that you have gaming machines, you're at this, and the second year you're at this. We don't get it too complicated, but it gives them that break to start their business and get people in their business. It's a little more business friendly. You're not ramping it up to 500 right away. So for this next year, we're at this level, and then the second year, after we propose this new change, then you're at level 2. I think it just gives people an opportunity if they're going to open up a new restaurant. We've heard of a few opportunities from people already that they don't have that extra $2,000 right out of the chute or whatever it might be. That'd be my suggestion. Everybody okay with that?
As long as we follow through on it, I'd like to see something written
Oh,
that
well.
actually says that we would start off at $250 for the first year and then move to 500, and it wouldn't be like, oh yeah, we forgot to do that, they're just still at 250.
Yeah, they have to renew their liquor license, so.
All right.
Any legal complications to charging different people different amounts for the video gaming?
We wouldn't.
I would prefer you do the 250 and the 500 because it does have that
Everybody would,
potential.
this next
That would be
fiscal
cleaner.
year, everybody would go, when their liquor license renews, the next year, they're at 250, everyone, because that's technically their first year of our change.
Right.
The next year, everyone would be at the higher level that has one, and new businesses would come in at 250.
Everybody's been renewed now, so in the next renewal, it will be 250, and then the following year, 5.
Yeah, and any new businesses, it's 250 a terminal for the first year. Everybody good with that?
Yes, sir.
Live with it.
Trustee Ranky, you don't look happy with that?
No, not at all. Just always watching the village attorney's face.
Don't do that, it complicates things.
Mr.
Right, a year after that, yeah, the years after that.
Mr. President, I have one more thing I'd like to add, and maybe we could do this in the committee of the whole. I'd like to take a look at the salaries of the trustees. It's my understanding, and they brought this, people have brought this to my attention, but nobody's saying anything about it, but I will, that the salaries of the trustees have not been increased since 1991, and there's been some talk, or it was in 1991 or 1998, I can't remember. And also, there's been talk that maybe if there was something for us to discuss, that maybe we could have some type of cost of living increase added to that on an annual basis, so we wouldn't have to discuss this ever again.
That you can't do.
Say-
You cannot have a cost of living increase.
Oh, okay, I
in
didn't
an
know that.
ordinance, but you can raise it to what you want. When it was brought up before, it was too close to an election and couldn't be done. At this point, it could be brought up. It would not go into effect. And with the current board, it would be as new trustees are elected.
It would be 2 years from now when that would go into effect.
I think that's a fair thing
It
to
wouldn't
do.
be automatic, it can't be.
Yeah, I mean, it would be starting at that point, here's what the salary would be.
2 years from now.
Yes.
And when it was brought up to me in previous times, I've said either eliminate it, because it's just a hassle to calculate it as a staff, eliminate it altogether, because we're basically volunteers anyway, or increase it to where it actually covers people's costs. And I think everybody needs to come to a determination what that is. I'm not included in this anyway, so.
That's something we need to discuss.
I think we can probably throw that on new business at the next meeting.
And I will tell you, a survey will be all over the map. There are volunteer communities, there are,
There are very few 42,000 resident communities that, yeah.
It'd be good for the board to see.
Yeah, I'd like to throw Tinley Park
We'll have
into that
that.
averaging as well.
All right, with that,
Mr. President, I have nothing else this evening.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman Deyne. With that, we will be adjourning to executive session to discuss property acquisition pursuant to Section 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act, and also to discuss personnel pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act.
Need a motion and a
Motion
second and a
to
roll call.
adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by trustee Carbonaro, seconded by trustee Deyne. Will the clerk call the roll to adjourn to executive session?
Trustee Cameron,
Yes.
Just say yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Deyne,
Yes.
Gabrenya,
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ranky.
All right, we're adjourned